Okay, so welcome to this week's podcast, episode 18 of the Golfing Secrets podcast. And welcome, thanks for sort of tuning in. This week's it's gone been thrown a little bit up in the air. Unless you've been hiding under a rock the last 24 hours, you will have heard that PGA Tour has now, or is going to be merging with LIV Golf and the DP World Tour to create they're calling it a for-profit organisation or entity. And so we're gonna talk quite a lot about that this week. We were going to do a session on putting, but I think given the scale of this news, it's really worth sort of talking about that as part of this podcast. But before we get to that, I just want to quickly cover off some of the results, because there's been some really good results over the last week. So on the PGA Tour, we had Victor Hovland. He won the Memorial, which is Jack Nicklaus's golf course. Beat Denny McCarthy in a playoff on I think it was the second hole on the 18th. I have to say, hats off to Denny McCarthy, though. What a putter he is. Last couple of events, in fact, he's been right up there. And I think he's in the top 10 of putting for on the PGA Tour this year. So, he's an astounding putter, certainly worth taking a look at. But as I say, I'm going to be covering off some putting sort of tips and approaches over the coming episodes, actually. So something to look forward to there. As you all know, we're doing another recorded video for this one, so just something a little bit different. We've got work going on outside the house, and so there's a few noises and stuff, so hopefully you won't pick too much of that up. But hopefully it doesn't interrupt the viewing pleasure and the listening pleasure. So apologies if there is any noise in the background. Back to the results, though. So we had the LPGA. We had Rose Zhang won. It was an inaugural ladies event, and being hosted by Michelle Wee. And we had Rose Zhang beating Jennifer Cho in a playoff, and that was also second playing of the 18th hole in a playoff. Now, Rose Zhang, this was her first win as a professional. It was also her first event as a professional, so she's 1 for 1 in terms of her professional career. So absolutely fantastic achievement, and in fact she's the first female player to do that since 1951. To win your very first professional event. So, it's a fantastic achievement. So not only has she won the Women's Masters this year, and also won the NCAA for the second time in a row. So the NCAA is a tournament and an event, a bit like the FedEx Cup is. It's done over the year, but it's between players who are aligned to colleges in the United States. So she won the NCAA for the second year in a row. Won Women's Masters back in April, or last month. I say last month, it's June now, and so she won that as well, and has now won her first ever Pro Tour event. So there's always been a lot said about Rose Zhang, and she's certainly sort of showing that already, and I think an absolute future Hall of Famer probably, and what a great start she's got up to. But she wasn't the first person to get their first win this weekend, or weekend gone. So on the DP World Tour, there was a lad by the name of Tom McKibben who got his first win on the DP World Tour. It's his first year as a rookie. It's not his first event, but he won the Porsche Open, beating Marcel Keim and another German who both came second place. And another fantastic achievement. Now, he actually plays golf and belongs to the same golf club in Ireland as Rory McIlroy. So quite interested to see that they've now got two high profile winning golfers now from the same golf club in Ireland. So I don't know, maybe it's worth going and joining, but maybe not. But that's so that's the results for this week, really. No LIV Tour event this week, but obviously there's a whole load more going on when it comes to the LIV Tour. So let's get into that after this short break. Okay, so welcome back, and it's on to the main event for this week. So we were going to talk about putting, as I say, we're going to do that later on. But as I say, if you've been under a rock and haven't heard anything, LIV and the PGA Tour have both announced that they're going to be merging after the 2023 season. Now, the details at this stage they're a little bit sketchy, but my understanding is, or the understanding that's come out is that they are going to be joining and basically creating what they're calling a commercial entity, a for-profit entity. We don't know what the name of it's going to be called yet, so we'll wait to hear on that. Now, part of the announcements that have come out have said that they're going to be including a team element to it. So how that works, again, it's very early days and we've got to yet sort of find out, really. So more of that will come out. But a lot of this really has completely come out of the blue. There's no getting away from it. I was actually travelling home from work yesterday, and it sort of came up. My other half sent me a picture saying, announcement on LIV and PGA Tour. And I was like, yeah, right, okay, thinking it was a joke, because this has just come completely out of the blue. So much so that it's, even the tour players didn't know until they were sent a letter yesterday morning to say that was what was happening. And it transpires that none of them were aware. And we'll come back to that in a moment. But equally, none of the LIV golfers knew either, and also neither did Greg Norman, who's the CEO of LIV Golf. And on that point, I don't know if it's something to do with... So Tiger Woods made a comment not that long ago saying that the PGA Tour and LIV could work together in some way, but only if Greg Norman wasn't there and wasn't involved. So, and he only found out when it was announced himself as well. So it's interesting to note that, and I do wonder if there's been some influence from the likes of Woods. And also from McIlroy. Now, McIlroy hasn't posted anything on social media to do with it. There's been no comments from him at all relating to the announcement. He himself would have received a letter, but it does get you thinking. He's been the sort of the front man, really, for the PGA Tour when it comes to the situation and what's been happening with LIV Golf. And I do wonder, and I'll put it out there. Was he in the loop with what was happening and was aware? Hence, he hasn't made any announcements or anything at the moment. Now, if he has and has been involved in the negotiations and that, then that's probably a whole nother topic. But if he hasn't, then basically what appears to have happened here, and apologies, you can probably hear. There's a lorry reversing out the front of our house. But what you can probably ascertain from that is if he wasn't aware, and what it seems to transpire is that it only seems to be that Jay Monahan and the head of the LIV Golf, or what they're calling the Public Investment Fund, the PIF, from Saudi Arabia, the chairman for that, have basically come up with this idea and this agreement themselves. There seems to have been no interaction with the players. The first the players got to hear of it was yesterday. Colin Morikawa, Mackenzie Hughes, Dylan Wu all posted different things along the lines of, nice to find out the news on Twitter, because that was the first time they sort of heard about it. Now, this for me just really it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right in the way this has happened. The PGA Tour, the DP World Tour as well, is all supposed to be geared towards, it's supposed to be for the players. Now, how can they agree something so huge, and this is groundbreaking for golf? This will change the face of golf forever, really. And to have such a groundbreaking announcement made and from all accounts agreed, without even talking to its members, just doesn't feel right. Now, when it comes to the likes of, you've got McIlroy, Tiger Woods, and one or two others on the tour, on the PGA Tour, they've been the front people, or certainly McIlroy has. He's been the front man for the PGA Tour, and it feels as though if he wasn't aware of this is, in that case, if he wasn't aware of it before it was announced, then it feels as though Jay Monahan has basically shoved him in the back, really, or stabbed him in the back. And you've got to question the morals of Jay Monahan. On one hand, we've got this guy who heads the largest and one of the wealthiest sort of organisations in the US, from a sporting perspective. He heads this organisation up and has made decisions and has made comments, in fact, previously about the fact that the tour is for the players. And in his back and forth with LIV Golf and that, he's sort of made a lot of comments about LIV Golf and the fact that, it's not about growing the game, it's not for the players, and all of this sort of stuff. And has basically, said that, it shouldn't be happening with the Saudi government because of some of the things that they've done in the past, which we're not going to sort of cover here. But he's basically sort of poo-pooed LIV Golf and the Saudi investment fund, or the PIF, and then lo and behold, he then just out of the blue agrees to merge with them. Now, the thinking behind this, I feel, is that, so obviously the LIV Golf has the backing of the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the PIF, and they've got more money than they know what to do with. So any court cases or anything like that, they've got money to keep that going. And although the PGA Tour is a wealthy organisation, has a lot of money in the bank, there comes a point when you can't just keep putting money after following money after money into something to try and defend something, when you know that ultimately the people in the opposition have got a lot more money than you have. You just can't keep doing that. And my thinking is that they've come to the realisation that they can't do anything about LIV Golf in terms of stopping it. It's happening, it's underway, and it has a modicum of success. So they may as well sort of join it. Now, part of the agreement is that the Public Investment Fund, the Saudi-backed part of it, will be investing money into this new entity. Now, for me, again, that smacks of, it's just a commercial and business decision. It's like, screw the members and anybody else. It's purely for financial gain and is a commercial business decision. And we understand that, they're going to be there to make a profit, even though, interestingly enough, the PGA Tour is actually registered in the States as a not-for-profit organisation. So that's an interesting one. That probably a debate for another day. But so all of this stuff is happening, and there's been no communication to the players except for this letter that was sent out yesterday morning, just before the announcement, and then lo and behold, they go and announce that this merger has happened. Now, for me, it just stinks of Jay Monahan doing it to almost feather his own nest, because he will now be the CEO of this new commercial organisation, which will have massive funding from the Saudi government or the Public Investment Fund, and you can bet your bottom dollar he'll be getting a big chunk of that money as a result of it. So you've got to think, we've got a guy here who on one hand was saying, don't trust the Saudis and all of this and all of the atrocities that they've had and the way that they operate and all of that sort of stuff. And then he goes and joins them. And it just goes to show that everyone has their price, I think. It really, for me, it just stinks of just for the money. Whether or not it's for the fans, is it going to be good for golf in the long run? We don't honestly know. We don't know at this stage until we start to get more details of what's going to happen. And my understanding is that there's a lot of the detail to be worked out. There's no doubt about that. How is this even gonna work? They've said as part of it they're going to introduce the team element, and obviously with LIV Golf, they have the team element is a big part of what they do. They have franchises, or what are deemed to be small franchises, which are the individual teams within the LIV Golf sort of organisation, and you just wonder what's going to happen with those. And I think, for one, the PGA Tour has thought, we haven't got enough money in the bank to keep fighting this and just to keep going, whereas the Saudi Public Investment Fund do. But equally, from a LIV Golf perspective, now, I've talked on previous podcasts about the coverage not being very good. The coverage is done through the thing called the CW network, which is, it's just a nightmare to get access to. It's painful. The coverage itself I don't think is particularly great anyhow, what I have seen of it. And so there's part of me also thinking that have LIV Golf decided or to sort of come together with the PGA Tour because they're simply not getting the sort of coverage that they need to maintain what they've got. So I think they're obviously going to come from it from a point of view that fits for them and suits them. Now, the other organisation that's involved with this is the DP World Tour. And you've got to think, how does this impact the DP World Tour? Because, there's no doubt about it. They're sort of like the third tier organisation in this whole sort of threesome. And you've got to think, how does it impact them? And again, at this stage, we just don't know. There's lots of speculation. But we had Keith Pelly, who's the head of DP World Tour. He was doing the announcement and saying how great it's going to be for golf, how they're going to grow the game, and it's all bollocks. At the end of the day, it comes down to it's a financial arrangement. It's for business purposes. It's that they've got an organisation. They want to make money off the back of this, and as individuals working for those organisations and heading them up, clearly, those individuals are going to make money out of it themselves. So, that's where we're at the moment. But the thing for me is really about the players and the fact that they just weren't communicated to until it was announced. The fact that has happened is, I think, disgraceful. It almost reminds me of some of the stuff that's gone on over here in the UK. One of the shipping companies, one of the cruise companies, I can't remember what they were called, based down in Dover, and they basically just sent a text to their employees to say that they were being made redundant and sort of left it as that, don't go into work sort of thing. And it almost feels a little bit like that with the way that the PGA Tour has done this, and also with the DP World Tour. So it all feels very wrong at the moment. But what's it going to be like for us as fans? Now, for me, I've certainly not been a big advocate for LIV Golf. There's no doubt about it. I've made some comments on the podcast recently, and I do think that I've sort of been coming round to it a little bit more and was going to go to the London event. But what does it mean for us as fans of golf? Now, what I said on, I'm not sure if it was last podcast or the one before, when I talked about, I think it was at the PGA Championship, and I talked about not being able to see some of the players, the likes of Mickelson and Koepka and some of those other players that are on LIV, not being able to see them on a regular basis was a real shame, and it was great to have them at the majors, at the Masters, and obviously the PGA Championships a couple of weeks ago. And it was good to have them, and I did say that it would be nice to see them playing more with the other top players in the game, with the likes of McIlroy, Rahm, Scheffler, and all of those others. Now, I didn't, at the time of saying that, I didn't honestly expect to have such a quick announcement of this happening, and I don't think anybody else did either. And there's still so much speculation as to how this is going to work and what the real detail is in it. Now, a lot of that will come out over the coming weeks and months. It doesn't look like it will happen until the start of the 2023 season. So they've got through to really sort of the end of October, I suppose. In fact, I think the new PGA Tour season usually starts in October. So they've got until then to get a lot of this stuff sorted, but they're going to have to sort of get their asses in gear to get this all set up and organised. Now, I did hear a comment from one sort of pundit saying that apparently they've been talking about this for 2 months. Now, if that's the case, they've certainly been keeping their cards close to their chests. And I honestly can't believe that over those 2 months, if that is the case, that they haven't included some of the golfers, so the likes of Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, maybe one or two others, haven't been included in that decision or communicated with around how it could work. So I just can't see that hasn't happened, which is potentially why I think Rory McIlroy maybe hasn't made any comments to this date, because he will be asked the question. He'll be asked the question as to whether or not he was aware and knew about it. So it'll be interesting to see what he says to that. But overall, is it going to be for the fans? Well, for me personally, if it means I get to see Koepka and Mickelson and all the others playing with Rahm and McIlroy and that on a more regular basis, then I'm absolutely all for it. The team side of things, I do like team events. There's no getting away from it. Love the Ryder Cup. Love the Solheim Cup as well. Ladies have done, as I said last week, actually, they've done a lot more sort of team events. So I do like it. Do like the team stuff. How that will work with the PGA Tour and LIV together, we've yet to find out, and we'll find out more, and we'll obviously talk a lot more about that in coming weeks and months. But it's going to be an interesting sort of journey, I think. Just such a thing out of the blue. I think there's no doubt about it. I think there is an element of greed left in it, if I'm honest. They don't do any of this without wanting some sort of financial gain out of it. But the worst thing from this all is what's the impact on the players themselves and how they've been treated. They've supported ones that haven't moved across, have supported the PGA Tour, missed out on getting multi-million pound cash offers, one-time payments and things. Who's it? Mickelson, reportedly got 200 million for joining LIV. Was told that he couldn't go back to PGA Tour, and now it looks like he can. So what are the players that stayed going to be thinking? And surely there will have to be some element of compensation for them for that case. Now, obviously, with all of the money that's going to be invested in through the Saudi Public Investment Fund, will mean that I would imagine purses for the events will skyrocket. So there'll be an opportunity to earn more money. But whether or not there'll be some individual payments as a compensation for what has happened from the PGA Tour, we've yet to find out. The coming days and weeks are going to be really interesting to see and hear some of the comments that are going to be coming out. But let's not forget, this is not the first time that this has happened. In effect, in my opinion, the Saudi government or the Public Investment Fund have in effect bought golf, is what they've done. And it's not the only sport that they're trying to do that. They're starting to do it within football. There was talk about a Super League a few years back, which didn't really sort of quite get going. But they've now started to pay big money to, the likes of who's the Portuguese player, the likes of Ronaldo, Benzema. They've been paying big multi-million pound deals to go and play in Saudi, and I don't think it will be long before they start talking about a Super League again. Run and hosted by the Saudi Arabia sort of government, and I think that will happen with that. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I think this is clearly it's a business decision, it's a commercial decision. There's a lot of money going to be involved, and people have probably done it to line their pockets. Not naming names, Jay Monahan, Keith Pelly, but I think just in shock, as it were. So it has happened. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the coming weeks and months, and we'll keep tuned onto that. But I'm gonna finish on this particular topic for now, and just sort of say that ultimately, for me as a fan, if it means I get to see the top players all playing together, great. That's all good. But I do feel that there will need to be some element of compensation for the players that didn't go across to live and stuck with the PGA Tour and didn't go across. The likes of Rahm, Scheffler, McIlroy, all of them. None of them just took the money and went. And so I think there'll have to be some sort of compensation for them. What happens with that, we don't know. But we'll find out over the coming sort of weeks and months, as I say. And that's where I'm going to leave it this week, actually. So there's a lot to digest. There's going to be a lot more sort of coming up. And so thanks for listening to this, more of an impromptu podcast rather than an official episode. But thanks for listening. If you do want some help with things like your putting or anything like that, if you visit howtopractice.com/stats, you can download a free copy of the stats tracker to help you sort of identify the areas that you need to improve and give you some useful information regarding your game. So that's it for this week. As always, if you get some value from this, stick some comments. Stick it in the Q&A section if you're on Spotify. If you're not on Spotify, if you're listening to this on YouTube, then post your comments down below. And we'll finish off by asking everybody, if you're watching this on the video or you're listening to on Spotify, if you can post in the comments your answer to this question: is the merger going to be good for golf? Post yes or no in the comments, or yes and no in the Q&As on Spotify. Thanks for listening. We'll catch up with everybody next week. Thanks all.